When 1981 Topps baseball cards hit the store shelves that spring, they were playing in a brave and scary new world. For the first time since 1955, Topps was not the only game in town. Both Fleer and Donruss issued baseball cards in 1981 after Fleer's landmark antitrust victory over Topps in 1980. While none of the three sets was spectacular, Topps cards were arguably the most solid and consistent of the bunch. And even after all these years, and even though there are still plenty to go around, they continue to draw interest on the secondary market. So which of the 1981 Topps baseball cards are the most valuable? To find out, I consulted PSA's Sport Market Report Price Guide, which compiles card values based on auction results of PSA graded cards. In the listings below, when you see three prices listed for a card, they correspond to sales of PSA 8, 9, and 10 copies, respectively. Rankings are chosen based on the 9 price, and I took the liberty of throwing out some flukishly high common prices. Here are the top 11. When Fernando Mania swept the nation in 1981, the hobby fell right in line. Hot on the heels of Joe Carbonneau's slugging rookie season and not far removed from the excitement of the Bird, Mark Fidrich, in 1976, we were ready for our next phenom. And boy, did Fernando Valenzuela deliver. In that strike-torn season, Fernando went 13-7 with a 2.48 ERA and tossed 8 shutouts among his 11 complete games, while helping the Los Angeles Dodgers win the World Series. All of that was good enough to snag both the Cy Young and Rookie of the Year awards in the National League for Valenzuela, and he finished 5th in MVP voting. Fernando shared his Topps rookie card that year with second baseman Jack Perconti and catcher Mike Scioscia, the later of whom you might recognize. Valenzuela never quite lived up to his hype after that amazing rookie season, but still turned in a long and productive career. Couple that with Scioscia's long solid numbers as a player and his success as a manager, and it's little wonder that SMR has this combo rookie at $6 in PSA 8 and $70 in PSA 9. Unlike Valenzuela, it took Kirby Gibson a while to get rolling in the big leagues after the Detroit Tigers made him their first-round pick in the 1978 draft out of Michigan State. By the time his rookie cards hit the store shelves in 1981, though, Gibson was ready to show his goods and batted .328 with 9 home runs, 40 RBIs, and 17 steals in the short season. He was a key part of Detroit's historic World Series run in 1984, and then had his signature moment in Game 1 of the 1988 Fall Classic with the Los Angeles Dodgers. In case you don't remember, that was the night Gibson basically crawled out of the dugout to hit a game-winning home run into the Los Angeles darkness. Anyone who didn't see Roy Hobbs rounding the bases that evening just wasn't paying attention. Gibson's path to the Hall of Fame was littered with busted body parts, and he never quite made it as far as some thought he might have. Still, his 1981 Topps rookie card, on which he appears alone, checks in at $8 in PSA 8, $50 PSA 9, and $1,100 in PSA 10, according to SMR. From just about the time he signed with the Texas Rangers in 1988, Nolan Ryan has sat at or near the top of every baseball card set he ever appeared in. That's the point at which fans and collectors started to realize that the Ryan Express may just roll on forever, and that meant he had a shot at all sorts of records and milestones. The hell of it is, he reached most of them. 7 no-hitters, 5,000-plus strikeouts, 300-plus wins. An epic punch to Robin Ventura's face? Yep. Ryan stomped his legend for good in the early 1990s, and cards like this 1981 Topps Astro issue was pulled along for the ride. SMR lists Ryan at $6 in PSA 8, $40 in PSA 9, and $900 in PSA 10. Even all these years later, Johnny Bench is still widely considered the greatest catcher of all time, even though much of his records have fallen to others over the last 3 decades. No matter what, though, Bench is the guy who revolutionized offense production from the catcher's position and helped drive the Big Red Machine to all of the 1980s glory. Fans and collectors haven't forgotten Bench's accomplishments either, as evidenced by the value of his baseball cards and regular appearances on lists like this. As for current value, SMR has the 1981 Topps Bench card at $7, $40, and $900 for PSA 8 through 10 copies, respectively. If it weren't for Rickey Henderson, we might be talking about Tim Raines as the greatest all-around leadoff man in Major League Baseball history. As it stands, Raines was a dynamic package of power and speed who terrorized pitchers for 2 decades, even though he played in the shadow of teammates Andre Dawson and Gary Carter with the Montreal Expos for much of his prime. And of course, in Henderson's shadow, like forever. Still, his 1981 Topps rookie card has been a collector's favorite for nearly 4 decades now, and SMR has it as $10, $30, and $300. Few players were as loved and hated at the same time as Reggie Jackson was during the 1970s and early 1980s. But hey, that's what happens when you talk a lot of smack, and then go out on the field and back it up with your bat. Even though he was already a superstar when he hooked on with the New York Yankees in 1977, it was his time in the Bronx that turned Reggie into a bona fide legend, and a candy bar, and Mr. October. By the time this card was issued, Reggie was starting to show his age just a bit, but superb conditioning and that ego kept him swinging away and producing at near peak levels. And sometimes, baseball cards get a boost by just looking so darn good, like this one. As for prices, SMR pegs this card at $5, $30, and $600 for PSA 8 through 10 copies. Yep, Pete Rose bet on baseball, and maybe in even more nefarious ways than we already know about, than he's already admitted. We may never know the full truth, and it's looking like Pete's lifetime ban will never be lifted. If that holds, he won't gain Hall of Fame election while he's still alive. But for baseball card collectors, Pete Rose achieved Cooperstown status long before the hobby boom of the 1980s, and he never really lost it. Thanks to Rose's run at Ty Cobb's all-time hits record in 1985, right as the cardboard frenzy was skyrocketing, Charlie Hustle became the second living player to ignite a constant and escalating demand for his cards. Mickey Mantle was the first. When Rose tumbled in 1989, his card slid back a bit, and then with the explosion of the 1990s and 2000s, kind of sort of soured everyone on most everything. But while Mantle more or less held his own, Rose cards took to the comeback trail. Today, despite his Hall of Fame deficiency, Rose cards are back near the top of every set they're in. This 1981 Topps card is something of an early junk wax era classic, showing Rose as he looked, helping lead the Philadelphia Phillies to the 1980s World Series title. For all that, this card trucks in at $5, $20, $900 according to SMR. After a mid-season call-up in 1997, Rickey Henderson turned in his first full season in the major leagues in 1980. Oh, and coincidentally, he also turned in his first 100 stolen base season and served notice that the recently retired Lou Brock might have reason to sweat. The former St. Louis Cardinals superstar had set just about every stolen base record you can imagine, but Rickey had the tools and the drive to demolish them all. And so he did. In 1982, Henderson set the single-season mark with 130 steals, then added 108 in 1983 to become the first 3-time 100-steal guy. Brock's all-time stolen base record fell in early 1991, and then Rickey kept piling on for another 12 years. By the time he retired in 2003, Henderson had established himself as one of the all-time greats. Not just on the base path, but at the dish as well. Final numbers included 3,055 hits, 297 home runs, 1,115 RBI, 2,295 runs, 2,190 walks, and 1,406 stolen bases. The runs and stolen bases are all-time records and help build Henderson's reputation as the greatest leadoff hitter ever. No wonder his second-year Topps card checks in at $6, $20, and $350. We're starting to get down into the range of cards and values where it's tough to differentiate one rookie or superstar from another. Is a Tony Pena rookie card really worth more than a Harold Baines rookie card, for example? SMR thinks so, at least at this moment in time. Now don't get me wrong, Pena was an all-star caliber catcher through most of the 1980s and finished with a career that looks roughly like that of Bob Boone and Brad Ausmus, according to Baseball Reference. Pena also raised his national profile through a rough 3 years as Kansas City Royals manager from 2002 to 2005, and it also probably helps that he shares this 1981 Topps card with Vince Law and Pascal Perez. SMR has the trio headed by Pena at $6, $20, and $200 for PSA 8 through 10 copies. Same story here. Is a 1981 Topps Steve Carlton card really worth more than a 1981 Topps Mike Schmidt card? I'd take Schmitty every time, but SMR current analysis gives the nod to lefty. And as was the case with Pena, you can't say Carlton is a bad choice for this list. After all, when this card was issued, he had just snagged the third of his 4 Cy Young Awards and was probably already a cinch for the Hall of Fame. On the negative side, this card is sort of the anti-Reggie of the 1981 Topps set. What an awful pick of a great pitcher. Nonetheless, SMR has lefty at $5, $20, and $425. To round out this list of the most valuable 1981 Topps baseball cards, we have a classy guy who was among the first players to play more games at designated hitter than in the field. Over 22 years, Baines collected 2,866 hits and 384 home runs for 5 different franchises, all in the American League. You have to wonder if 3,000 hits or 400 homers or maybe a few more hundred games in the field would have gained him a Hall of Fame plaque from the writers instead of having to wait for the Veterans Committee. As it stands, Baines was a 6-time All-Star who fell off the Cooperstown ballot after 5 tries. Even so, Baines was a pretty awesome hitter who somehow avoided the multiplayer purgatory of the 1981 Topps rookie cards. His Herald-only issue goes for $4, $10, and $300 for PSA 8 through 10 conditions according to SMR. Like our video? Then like our video and subscribe to our channel, waxpackgods.com.